This episode is sponsored by MJ's Progress Not Perfection Meeting Center Association. We are in our meeting center where we do all these meetings for mental health and addiction. I can do this podcast anywhere. I can do this at home. I can do this in a closet. I can do this in a basement. It doesn't matter. All I need is somebody else to talk to about addiction and recovery. What I can't do from anywhere is help people with their addiction and their mental health problems. So if you can help out, we do have a Venmo, we have a Cash App, we have a PayPal, we have an address you can send a check to, and, all the money that gets donated goes towards rent, goes towards keeping the lights on, and goes towards keeping the internet on. So please, if you can give $5, $10, $20, it doesn't matter. Anything you can is so appreciated. And if you are a local business, if you're a national business, whatever, and you want to be a part of what we're doing, you can reach out to me and we can talk about how you can be a sponsor. But I'll let you get back to the episode.
Welcome to the show, Molly. I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks.
Now you reached out, Nicole that I interviewed a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And so, but you didn't really know her, like you knew of her, like you guys knew each other in passing, was it?
Oh no, I mean we used very heavily together, but I don't know who she really is because I don't really consider who she was when she was using. But yeah,
Uh,
no, we spent many days together.
oh, I see. So you knew the Nicole from addiction. And
Yes.
not the Nicole necessarily that like I interviewed because and that's how it is too. When you get sober, especially two people that were getting high together, usually one person goes this way with sobriety, one person goes this way, and it is what it is. The most important part is you stay sober.
Right.
So what is your clean date then?
July 23rd, 2018.
Okay, cool. So you got a little over 3 years then.
Mhm.
And what was going on with you July 2018 for you to, be like, I need to get sober. I need to stop doing what I'm doing.
Well, I had gotten arrested and I accumulated about 20 different soliciting charges, and my probation officer kind of threw in the towel on me and said either I'm serving 6 months or I'm going to treatment. And so I didn't really willingly go into this, but as I was in jail, I started kind of feeling a little bit more like maybe I do have a chance at a better life. And a lot of things moved for me to go to a treatment program in Springfield, far away from Columbus. And I went there, and that's kind of where I started to mentally want to
Yeah.
captain to do it.
Yeah, because, how many soliciting charges did you have for the probation officer to be like, Molly, come on?
Yeah, like at least 20. So
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah,
was on my
that's
last leg.
yeah, I mean, definitely. Now, when did you like start getting arrested? How old were you?
Well, I have two different times in my life that I used and did the sex work and the trafficking. So in 2002 was the last time, and I was out for like 5 years. And I had a few years sober and relapsed with the guy drinking, and went back out for another 3 years.
Okay, so then let's really rewind then. So did you start out with alcohol like a lot of us, or did you go right into drugs?
I definitely started with weed and alcohol. Really young. I was probably 12, and I was getting, drinking Magnums and King Cobra 40s, and I lived in a very like hippie town. I grew up in Yellow Springs, Ohio, which is a very like
Yeah, I've heard of
very
I've heard of Yellow Springs. That's where Dave Chappelle lives.
yeah. He was a few
That's
years ahead of me, but I knew
yeah,
him.
yeah. It's
But it
very
was
he's very
very
famous for that now.
yeah. It was very socially acceptable to smoke weed there. Like my mom did, everybody that I knew did. So we started smoking weed at a really young age, which kind of led me to older crowds that I started doing a lot of. This is a different time, but I started doing a lot of party drugs in my early teens: ketamine, acid,
Ecstasy.
ecstasy,
How
nitrous.
how old are you if you don't mind me asking?
I'll be 41 next month.
Okay, you don't look 41. Yeah, but and that makes sense though because I'm 35, and ecstasy was huge in the 2000s, like early to mid, late 90s. I always think of Bad Boys 2, how they're trying to take down the ecstasy ring because that was the big drug in the early 2000s when that movie came out. It wasn't
Yes.
coke flooding the borders in Miami, it was ecstasy. It's
Mhm.
crazy. So now it's the early 2000s and you're getting into like the party drugs and stuff like that. Or
Yeah,
late
and
late
then
90s, late 90s, early
right,
2000s.
right, and then me and my longtime boyfriend, who is my oldest son's father, split up, and I was only 21 at the time, I think, and we split up, and I lost custody of my youngest son, or my oldest son now. Sorry, my oldest son, and I met I was just kind of floating around, homeless. I was distraught over losing custody of my child, and I met a guy when I was homeless that was like, "Oh, you can come home with me." And so I went home with him, and he was a lot older than me, and he was just strange acting. He would leave a lot for like days at a time, and he wouldn't let me leave, and I didn't really have anywhere else to go, so I felt stuck there, and one day he kind of swindled me. Well, he put it under the guise of, if you have sex with this guy and me in the same room, like, I think that'll turn me on. And I really was so naive. I was like, I don't want to do this, but I want to make him happy. So I did. But as soon as we all three got together, like, he left the room, and then when everything was all said and done, the guy that he had left me with was like, here, and handed me some well, I know now it was crack. He handed me some drugs, and he was like, I already paid him, but I want to make sure you get some of it too. And I was like, I don't know, like, it all came clear to me right then that he had sold me to him. And I was so mad. I came upstairs, and I just wanted to, like, I don't know. And so I tried it, and it was really, I tried the drugs, and I can say it was probably the first time I tried it, I was like, I need more of this. So he would hold it over my head, and he would keep bringing more guys. And here, I'll give you this little bit if you do this. And that went on for about a year before he got arrested for a previous charge he had finally. And then I was just kind of strung out and on my own.
So yeah, when you met him, you were like an alcoholic though. You were like
Hmm.
homeless because of your drinking. You
Yeah.
lost your kid because of your drink. You weren't even
Yeah.
into really drugs yet. If like the party drugs, yeah, like
Yeah.
and that's for those who are listening or watching that don't know, there's a huge difference from the party drugs of the, coke, Adderall, ecstasy, acid, shrooms compared to crack. Crack isn't a party drug. Crack isn't something you break out the kitchen counter during, a fucking party when there's
No,
keg stands going on. You
not
know
at
what I mean?
all. Not at
So,
all.
that's a huge step in the wrong direction technically, but I mean that's your story. That's what happens. So you end up getting strung out on it. This dude that was basically trafficking you, it sounds like, just would find guys to come over, and then he would get paid for pimping you out. Basically, that's what sex trafficking doesn't look like what some of the movies makes it look like. From what I've been talking to like you girls about, it's more like it can you explain? It's almost like that theory, the nurse where that you get attracted to the nurse that's taking care of you. What's that called? The Florence Nightingale syndrome, where like
Yeah.
it's almost like you're afraid to leave because you're afraid of the bad world out there, and at least you're safe in here somewhat. The biggest thing that we fear is the unknown. At least if you know what's happening in that house, even if it's not safe or not right, and even in your mind, I'm sure in your mind, like, I should not be doing this, but at
Right.
the same time, you're like, I need to do this in order to survive, though.
Right. And then when you because no, it's not really this thing where people that are these men that are trafficking women are, just trafficking them. There's almost, if not always, almost always a drug involved, and it's a strongly addictive drug like crack and heroin. Short acting drug. Crack is so short acting, he can give me $2 worth of crack and have me running for that $2 worth of crack all day long, essentially. Throw me
Just
another
so you
$2
can,
worth.
yeah.
And it's like there's different ways. Coercion is definitely one of them. Debt bondage. Oh, I'll give you some of these drugs, but you owe me for these drugs. I'll get you high first, but you owe me now. I got to work you.
That's what I think Nicole said happened to her, where they would front out the drugs in the morning to get them through, but they had to pay it back when they came back for the day, or don't come back until you have the money to pay it back or
Right.
whatever.
Don't come back, or we'll send one of our other addicts. We'll give them $5 worth of dope to go chase you down on the streets and beat your ass. And that's modern day pimping is how it really is.
Yeah, it's not the fucking jacket and the cane and the hat and the whole 9 yards.
No,
It's the old couple in their 60s and their 50s that have the little white picket fence that could be your neighbor. And if all of a sudden you're seeing a bunch of random girls in their 20s living with this couple, call somebody about that, because there's usually some shady shit going on. If all of a sudden this couple didn't have any grandkids all their lives and they've been living next to you, and all of a sudden there's girls in their 20s living there with them, that's a red flag.
Yeah. That's a red flag. It's going to be pretty obvious, though, as well, because they don't feed you. It's not like you get fed well or showers. Oftentimes, if I wanted a shower or food, I had to somehow come up with money on top of my drug money, on top of what I owed them money to take a shower. So I had to pay $10-20 just to take a shower. I had to pay, just to eat a meal, or even to just use the bathroom. So yeah,
it's almost like you're better off in a homeless shelter, except for
you can't get high.
You can't get high.
Right.
So, and that's why they hold that over you. That's, and it's, so you get caught up in that. Now you get out of that because the guy gets thrown in jail, but now you're kind of thrown to the wolves theoretically, because it's what, 2002?
Mm-hmm.
And you're homeless. Is this when you get clean the first time?
Yeah. Well, after I left him, it was a good good 3 years that I was just being trafficked by various different people on the streets, because I literally walked out of his house that day when he got arrested onto the streets with nothing but the outfit on my back and an addiction. So I very quickly found it was a transgender, well, that I thought it was a woman, but it was a man, transgender, however that works. I don't know. Sorry if my pronouns are wrong.
Male to female transgender is the correct.
There you go. Stopped me on the streets and kind of started off with saying, I'll help you out. We'll take you to my house and get you something to eat. And then next thing I know, I was being trafficked by that person and being passed on to her brother next. And I mean, I just, at that time, I was driven by my addiction, and that was all I had in my mind was, if I can even get one hit, it's worth whatever I have to do along the way, whoever beats me up, whoever I have to have sex with, whoever, to get there.
No, yeah, and I totally get that. I totally understand that. And that's kind of, I talked about it with somebody, I forget who. We talked about how it's kind of why women kind of stay in addiction longer than men sometimes.
It's easier for them.
And it's not even easier because morally it's hard, but it's easier, like, to be like, if I was to wake up withdrawn, I would have to really strain myself of, how can I make $100 to get high today? And then for you, it's not the how, it's the, how am I going to get through doing this while withdrawing? I never liked having sex or doing anything while withdrawing.
Yeah.
It is not fun, but the whole point is it wasn't going to be fun for you regardless. You know what I mean? It's not like you were meeting these dudes and going, oh my God, I'm so in love, this was amazing. no, you were like, all right, half an hour, bro. Get the fuck out of here.
You're right.
You know, it's time to move on.
Yes. I
So
mean, definitely.
I
But yeah.
yeah, and that's why the drugs came in handy because then you can kind of numb what you did at the same time of actually fixing the fix of the physical or mental withdrawal you're going through at the time.
And
Especially
you
like
know,
you're in fucking Ohio too. Like Columbus is not like an easy place to be homeless. Like I've been to Columbus. And I know the hood of Columbus. I've gotten, you know what I mean? Like I've gotten off the highway before coming from Ann Arbor and I was in the hood of Columbus going through a Burger King and they were like, "You got to get out of here because you're wearing Michigan colors in Columbus and
I bet.
you're dumb as hell." Like my brother and I literally came from Ann Arbor. We were driving back to North Carolina where we were living at the time and I was hungry, and I was like, "I'm getting off the highway here." He goes, "You can't. It's Columbus." Because he's the bigger fan than I am. I'm more of a Notre Dame fan, and he was like, "We can't get out here, JD. It's Columbus." I said, "It's fine." And he goes, "No, we're wearing Michigan stuff. My car is Michigan stuff all over it. We cannot go to Columbus, JD." And I said, "I'm getting off and having it fucking my way and going to this Burger King that the highway is telling me is off this exit." So, and it was the hood. And we pulled up to the window. She was like, "I shouldn't even be giving you this food. If blah, blah, blah was here, he would be pissed. Here, get the hell out of here." So,
I bet. I
yeah,
bet.
that Ohio State Michigan rivalry does not play around.
Play around,
So,
right?
yeah, but it's cold there. That's my point. And it's not easy to be homeless. You're driven to do some shit you don't want to do because you kind of feel like you have to get a roof over your head or a blanket. Like I know
Oh
plenty
yeah,
of
there
people
was
that are
times.
homeless in LA that are able to live homeless in LA because it's
Right.
nice
There
all
were
year
times
round.
I would go out and work just because I didn't, even when I had drugs, because the only way for me to get someplace to go in warm was to either buy more drugs or pay to lay somewhere for a while, which, it never ended up working out. The money always runs out. You're always kicked right back out. But, there was times where I didn't even need to get high. I either had drugs or I was done getting high, but I still had to go out and hustle money up because it was so cold. There was times I was walking down the street in nothing, like literally t-shirt and jeans and flip-flops and snow. Um,
Yeah, and the snow is crazy around there. Like
Bananas.
that's what I mean. Like you get all the weather. And I'm in Pennsylvania, so I get it. We get all the weather. When I
Yeah.
when I lived in North Carolina, it was not the case, and when I lived in LA, it was not the case. But where we live, we get all the four seasons plus some. I feel like we get like the extremes of all four seasons.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're not far from snow. I know my buddy lives in Minnesota, and it's already snowing there. So I
Mm.
know it's coming. All right. So now it's been a few years, and you're in and out or you're out the whole entire time. Now, what causes you to like be like, all right, I need to try to like, when you got sober in 2002, what was it?
A felony conviction. I had gotten, I think I was on my seventh felony for possession. At the time, the laws were a little different too. So I was getting charged possessions for having paraphernalia, even if I didn't have drugs on me, because they would charge me with 0.00001 grams of cocaine, and that was a felony 5. So I had gotten up to my seventh of the same thing, like literally the seventh felony for the same thing, and they sent me away to a correctional program called Monday. And while I was in there, I chose to go to Alva's house in Columbus, and that's how I ended up in Columbus, because I was in Dayton, Ohio when this was happening.
Okay. All right. So then you ended up in Columbus now, and you got sober that time. It worked.
Yeah, it worked. I was sober for almost 8 years.
Did you do any kind of program in that 8 years? Were you completely sober, or were you just
I was
absent?
completely sober, but it was because of just white knuckling it. I didn't have any program. I started the first year or so, I was intermittently in and out of meetings, but after that, it was just me white knuckling it, and I don't know why I thought I could do it on my own will, but it seemed to be a good idea at the time.
It sounds like without even asking, you work a program this time just because you use the phrase white knuckling, and I never would have used that phrase if it wasn't for learning it in the rooms, really,
Right.
to learn what I was trying to do. So like that tells me that you do work a program now.
Yeah.
the fact that you say something like in that way, if that makes sense,
Right. Oh yeah.
it's really funny.
Sober
So,
slogans.
yep. Which is actually
Yeah.
there, this guy's been on my show and he's going to be on it again. Jeff Vickers, he wrote a book called Sober Slogans.
Yeah. It's a good book.
I'm sure you've seen it pop up. That dude is all about marketing. He is crazy. I like him though. He'll be on the show again soon. Okay, so now 8 years. That's rough white knuckles. That's
Mhm.
and
It
for
was.
again for those who don't know, white knuckling. That's for people like Molly in this case. That's like, hey, I'm not gonna drink. I'm not gonna smoke. I'm not gonna do drugs. But I'm also not going to find out why I did all of those things. And I'm not going to work on myself. I'm just going to try to pretend it never happened. And
Yeah.
let's go. It's time to live life. And those addiction years never happened. And I'm a good girl. And I don't do drugs or drink or smoke weed. You don't
Right.
need to know why. I don't need to know why. I just don't do it anymore. And
That's
that's
a
why.
really accurate representation of what it was like. Yes.
Um, and unfortunately, what happens is what happens. 8 years sounds like a long fucking time. Like shit, 3.5 years. I haven't touched an opiate. That feels like forever. 8 years is double the time. So, 8 years later, 2010, 2011, what happens to Miss Molly where she's like, I need to fucking get drunk?
Well, I had it was a man. I had met this man and I knew he was bad news because he drank a lot. Like I met him, my roommate had known him for years, and I woke up one day and he was passed out in like a comatose state, drunk on my couch. And for some reason I felt like instantly in love. And I mean, at first I tried to work through it. I really did. Like it was a while before I finally gave up and had a drink with him. But I mean, maybe 6 months into it, he had moved in the first week we met. All of a sudden, we're, like this, and he was getting drunk every night. And I just got to this point where I was like, man, I feel like I'm missing out. He would go to the bar and I wouldn't go because I wasn't drinking. And I was like, oh, I can just have a drink. So I went to the bar with him one time and had a drink, and it worked that first time, but very slow. I mean, very quickly. Within a week's time, I would say, I was pounding back beer after beer with him from morning to night. It just came back that quick to me. And very shortly thereafter, well, I would say within a couple of years, I had progressed to, oh, I'll try a hit of crack. And by that time, he had become so controlling and, um, the typical abuser. So he had made it so hard for me to go see my family that I just stopped going to see them. If I ever left the house without him, he would call me or whoever I was with back to back to back to back and accuse me of cheating until I would just come home. He made me lose a lot of jobs. He would call my jobs in the middle of my shift, freaking out and cussing my boss out, saying that I was out cheating on him. And so at this point, I was pregnant. So I'd gotten pregnant by him. So at this point, I had lost any self sustainability, anyways. So I was just under his control. And he started using with me, and we started getting heavier and heavier into drugs. And the third time that the cops came out to our house, we had a son together. So my son was about 4 years old at this time, and he was on the third time the cops had come out for domestic violence charges to our house. And we had already had the gas shut off, the water shut off. We didn't have electricity. We were using a cord from someone else's house. I had no business having a child here, anyways. So God did for what I couldn't do for myself. And the third time that the cops got called on us, they took him to jail for an extended period of time. And I was left there with no money, a 4-year-old child looking at me hungry and bundled up in his little jacket because it was so cold in the house. And I knew that I couldn't do this to him anyways anymore. my mother-in-law or his grandma or whatever to come get him. And his grandmother came and got him, and I felt I had nothing else to live for, so I walked out that door, and it happened to be we lived in the thick of the sex work neighborhood of Hudson. So I walked out that door right onto Hudson in Columbus and fell right back into a trafficker's arms.
So, okay. That's rough. So it's 2015 now, right? Is that
Mm-hmm.
what it is?
Yeah, about.
And your husband goes away. Was he your husband?
No, we were together
Well,
for
but
6
This
yeah.
years.
episode is sponsored by MJ's Progress Not Perfection Meeting Center Association. We are in our meeting center where we do all these meetings for mental health and addiction. I can do this podcast anywhere. I can do this at home. I can do this in a closet. I can do this in a basement. It doesn't matter. All I need is somebody else to talk to about addiction and recovery. What I can't do from anywhere is help people with their addiction and their mental health problems. So if you can help out, we do have a Venmo, we have a Cash App, we have a PayPal, we have an address you can send a check to, and all the money that gets donated goes towards rent, goes towards keeping the lights on, and goes towards keeping the internet on. So please, if you can give $5, $10, $20, it doesn't matter. Anything you can is so appreciated. And if you are a local business, if you're a national business, whatever, and you want to be a part of what we're doing, you can reach out to me and we can talk about how you can be a sponsor. But I'll let you get back to the episode.
Yeah, he might as well be. Okay.
Right.
The dude you're with, living with, partner, had a son with, goes to jail. And I'm just trying to catch up. And the easiest, obviously, get your kid protection, get him a roof. That was the smartest thing to do. But you're in the thick of doing crack again, right? At this point.
Yeah.
So
and I had moved on to opiates too at this point. So
now you're shooting dope too. Okay. And so did you move into opiates because that was your ex's drug of choice before you got? That was my guess. So because it would be really random for him to be a heavy drinker and then to just go into crack.
yeah.
Just because his girlfriend was doing it when he's the
Right.
narcissist that's controlling. Usually the narcissist that's controlling, that's the addict, gets their significant other into the drug that they want to do. So that would make sense. That's why
it progressed. He actually was very heavy into perks and pain pills
Roxy's,
for stuff like that when we were more together, like when we were holding jobs and everything and we had the money to do that sort of thing.
Was he doing the drives to Florida?
No, he wasn't doing that, but he was working on construction crews, and a lot of them there was a lot of access to pills on those crews. I don't know exactly why that is.
Well, I think a lot of them had scripts, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them was easy. It's easy to get scripts when you work in that kind of field because you can claim pain while you're working. Like I had a girl on from Columbus that her and her husband, they were in addiction together and sobriety together now. They were doing the trip to Florida 4 times was it 7 times a month or 6 times a month? They were driving from Columbus to Florida 22 hours each way, but they were getting 1,800 pills a month. 1,830s, 1,800 15s, 1,500 bars.
I know.
Just a ridiculous amount. So now you're out in the street. You said you fell into a trafficker's arms. Were you looking for a trafficker?
Well, no. Okay. So as soon as I walked out of that house, I was walking down Hudson and a car stopped right beside me. And I kind of knew, like, I mean, I wasn't stupid. I knew what they wanted. It was a guy, and, he told me to get in. And so at that point, I don't know, I was not in my state of mind, also, But so I jumped in and I did something with that guy for money. And then the first drug dealer I found was ready for a woman to come along that was fresh on the streets. And he took full advantage of the situation.
I see now. Okay, so the dude you bought drugs off of also, like you said, a lot of the traffickers also dabble in selling drugs or vice versa. So the dude that you're buying drugs off was like, "Hey, I can help you make some money if you want to buy some more drugs off me."
Exactly. And hey, I've got this spare bedroom upstairs. It was a trap house. So it wasn't like anything. He was legally there. There was no electricity or anything. But he had a couple other women that was in these bare bedrooms, getting high and going out and coming back in. But in that moment and in that lifestyle, that seems appealing and you want that. So yeah, you'll agree to, and especially he's going to hand you extra drugs, and you just pay him back later. It sounds so great and enticing at first until he's chasing you down the street with him and 10 of his friends and ripping your clothes off and beating you because you went somewhere else or because you didn't come back when you thought you should have came back, or
That happened to you, or
more
is
than once. More than once. The same guy. This guy, he ended up finally getting arrested, which is probably the only reason I survived. But actually, Nicole was. It was probably Nicole's same trafficker. I'm pretty sure. His name is
you don't have
Jack.
to?
Okay. Anyway, so he was ruthless and he actually used as well. But he would literally like drive around town with him and like 4 or 5 of his goons, like the dudes that would do anything to make him happy because he had a pocket full of drugs. And if they saw me, which of course I was visible, I was trying to find dates and trying to get high and all that. So I was always, visible enough. And if they seen me, they would just pull over and jump out the car and either beat me until I got in the car or drag me into the car and then take me back and beat me. And um the neighborhood was such as even if people saw it happening, they aren't going to say anything.
Because that's the neighborhood, and
Hmm.
you don't call the cops on the neighborhood people. That
Right. Yeah. And also, I wasn't to the people in the neighborhood, especially as visible as I wasn't a human anymore. Um, I was a monster. I was, you know, a junkie, a fiend, I was all that. So I became non-human to them.
Yeah, and that's kind of on par with what Nicole was talking about, how she felt. I mean, and she had, and you probably do too, like that before picture that she had, she's like 75, 80 pounds, abscesses, her hair matted to her head. And, when I asked her about it, she was like, I thought I looked cute there and sent that to my mom.
Right, me too.
She was like, that was a good picture that I
Yeah.
had sent out originally that I thought was good in the moment. And I'm like, oh, so like looking in the mirror, if the pictures sometimes don't do justice, which they don't a lot of the times, pictures don't do justice. I can't imagine what you're seeing in the mirror. I know it's funny because it's not funny. It's ironic. I'm the opposite of what most drug addicts. I gained weight in addiction.
Mm.
I was the person that just retained water the entire time and gained weight with opiates. But I also think it has to do with what you're doing in addiction, depending on what your body goes through with the. So, like, for me, my addiction looked like a lot of driving. I drove a lot in my addiction. I wasn't doing 22-hour drives, but I was doing 2-hour drives 4 times a week each way. That's a lot of driving. That's also a lot of sitting.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, and you're literally, like you said, you're walking the streets.
Yeah.
And
When you say walk in
not
the
for
street,
nothing. Yeah, literally walking the streets.
literally, yeah. Like I mean,
Literally
there were
walking. Yeah,
for a
and
week straight. Week
and not
straight.
and not and not for nothing. Having sex burns a shitload of calories.
Facts.
You know what I mean? Like it's just the truth. It's like thousands of calories sometimes you can burn. So if all you're doing all day long is getting high and walking the streets and having sex, yeah, you're going to look emaciated real fast.
Well, and
You're
I existed off little Debbie cakes and gas station pizza whenever
That's what I
I
mean.
want
Yeah,
to splurge.
and
But
that's
I mean, I would go 2 weeks without eating with no problem.
but
Like none.
that's my point is for the last 3 years of my addiction, I was basically living off Reese cups and Coke from the
Hmm.
gas station. I
Hmm.
only I ran a plumbing company with my dad and my brother. And so like I wasn't, like the head person. So like I got a paycheck every week, but I made really good money. In commission the one year, I made 97 grand. But guess what? I didn't have a dime to my name at the end of the year. And I that entire year I did not spend any of my money on anything but drugs because every time I needed cigarettes I used my gas card from my work gas card. Every time I need cigarettes, work gas card. If I wanted Reese's or a Coke or some kind of snack, gas card. Gas to drive back and forth to Jersey, gas card.
Right.
Going back and forth to Jersey 4 times a week, I had my Easy Pass. So all the money I was making was going straight to drugs, couple grand a week, straight to drugs. Plus I was
Hmm.
being fronted, and plus there was so many different things, that I was doing to go through them, but I was sitting. So we had the same diet,
Yeah.
except for my diet did not include walking 8 miles a day. And let's be honest, I wasn't really having sex. I was depressed as shit. And I didn't want to try. I wasn't attracting any suitors, you know. I was in a relationship for 3 years in my addiction, and we were best friends growing up. And she was bipolar, schizophrenic, and alcoholic. So it's not like we were fucking all the time. It's not like,
Right.
you know. So yeah, like I gained weight. I was like I always say like Chris Farley gained weight when he was on heroin and coke,
Yeah.
and like I'm like that, except for not nearly as funny. So so it makes a lot of sense to me if you really think about the activities one is doing in addiction. And just like I said, I'm not even trying to be morbid or anything, but having sex burns a lot of calories. So if that's your life for years, yeah, I mean, what did you get down to when you got sober again?
Oh, at my lowest weight, I was 79 pounds. And I'm 5 foot tall. Um, my healthy weight is 135, 140.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I was to the point where, like, I mean, you could see my backbone, every bone in my body was poking out. I mean, I really literally looked like a Holocaust survivor, very much so. And my
Now,
liver was failing, so I was yellow. My skin was yellow. I had sores everywhere, just like every addict out there gets.
did you go through the same program that Nicole went through? What was the program? Angels. Do you know about it? That they go into the courts?
No, I don't even know what her specific program was, but my family actually showed up and kind of fought for me to go to a faith-based recovery program. They were trying to get me into the catch court in Columbus, which is where a lot of the women in Columbus go through, but I would have been stuck in Columbus. And also my family knew before I knew it that I really needed to find some spirituality along with my recovery to,
Yeah.
really recover.
So because you had said earlier on you had been arrested 20 times for soliciting and everything, and now you get thrown in jail. Your probation officer's like, Molly, we're done. We're not doing this shit anymore. Is this when your family steps in because you're about to go to jail and they get a phone call, or what
Well,
is it that
yeah.
all of a sudden they're like, hey, we'll be in your life again, Molly?
Well, they didn't really have much choice. When I go so ghost, you can't find me. And they're not from Columbus. They were actually from where this program that I went to is at in Springfield, Ohio. So they had tried to find me and had succeeded one other time on Hudson, but I didn't have any steady phone number. I didn't have an address. So there was years they didn't see me. So the only time they could get in contact with me is when I was in jail. Um,
At least they knew where you were.
right. And I was safe and I was alive. So I had a couple members of my family that really decided that they were going to go the extra mile to save me. And they fought for me to go to Safe Harbor in Springfield because they're close to here too, as well as it being faith-based. This is a side of them. I didn't grow up in a faith-based environment, but this is a side of my family. It's my aunt and my cousins that did all this. They had faith in their life, so they knew how important it was for them, and they'd seen it work for a lot of their people in their church. So they fought. They wanted to be close to me so they could be supportive, and they also wanted me to be in a faith-based program.
And how has that been working this time around? Is the faith-based, is it AA, or is it like, do they use the steps in there, or like, what do
Yeah,
you?
we use the steps. I was actually in there for 16 months, so it's a holistic inpatient treatment. So I started in there, and we would go to IOP like most people in recovery go through. So you'd have to go
Yep.
through that 3 times a week. Then we did trauma therapy. We had to go to church every Sunday, which was a whole new thing for me. I'd never done that before. And we had to go to 5 recovery meetings a week. So it'd be AA, NA, sometimes Celebrate Recovery or a faith-based recovery meeting. And that was 16 months of retraining me to live.
So when did you got out of that, what, like last January?
Been 2 years now.
Yeah.
2 years now, yeah.
Okay. So now that we're coming into, was that right before the holidays that you got out of that?
Yeah, I got out the 1st of December. Yeah.
Okay. That's perfect timing because, these episodes are airing in December to raise awareness around relapse rates spiking up 33% from Thanksgiving to New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
Now, how do you feel? Because, like, I know what it's like in addiction. We barely even know what fucking day it is. Sometimes somebody's like, it's your birthday, right? And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
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 You don't pay attention to that shit. They say we live recovery one day at a time. I lived addiction 1 minute at a time.
Absolutely.
I was not concerned with JD's problems tomorrow. I was concerned with the right now. If I had 4 pills and I said to myself, I could really get fucking high off these 4 pills, or I can do 2 now and 2 tomorrow. I'm going to do 4 now.
Do 4.
And, and I'm going to
Yeah.
figure it out tomorrow. Because
Right.
I live this addiction 1 minute at a time. So, nothing's really changed. We're impulsive people regardless. The difference is I don't do drugs and I don't drink anymore. So, how do you get through Thanksgiving and the Christmas and the New Year's? Like, how is it with family, with friends, support
Right.
system? Like, what are you doing for that for yourself?
And I don't know how sustainable this is, but I mean, I have been able to find a career that does this. For me, it's all about reaching out and giving back. God has really put a calling on my heart to reach women that are out on the streets the same way I was. So this year I'll be doing a Thanksgiving dinner for the women on Sullivan, as well as a Christmas celebration. So we have a drop-in center at my job in Columbus, and we'll be doing like gifts for the women. Like, I've gotten to know some of these women, and I don't care if they're high. I don't care if they just jumped out of a car with a guy. None of that matters to me. And so I get out of myself. But dealing with like being with my family and stuff, it's become, I think my family has also been very like gracious to me. They gave me a lot of time before they'd even have a drink, like a glass of wine in front of me. And now none of my family have any kind of drinking problems. They drink half a beer and they're like, woo. Weird.
Yeah.
One of those weird people.
Yeah.
But so I don't really get triggered at the family things anymore. But also, like, just I have to qualify it with, I have a very, very firm program. So I have firm boundaries. I have very firm things that I do every day in my daily life to keep me spiritually fit. And those help me in those moments. But yeah,
So,
I mean,
yeah.
I just get back a lot. I stay out of myself.
Okay, so you give back a lot. You still go to meetings. How often do you go to meetings? Are you participating in meetings in your recovery?
Yeah, well, it's kind of a weird situation because I work two jobs. They're both in recovery. So I work at the place that I was in treatment at 2 years ago. I'm a phase coach and a shift lead there. So I take them to meetings pretty regularly. But I try not to share as much in those meetings where my residents are at because it's their time. So I've kind of come to a it's kind of a balancing game. But on my own, I would say I go to at least 3 meetings a week. Honestly, two of those are faith based, but that's because that's what works for me. And then an AA meeting. Um, but yeah, I take them to whatever meetings they want to go to.
That's cool, and I think that's important too. That I remember being in rehab and like residential, and they would take us out to meetings, or sober living. They would take us to meetings, and because we didn't have cars, obviously,
Right.
and the staff would go into the meetings. Majority of the staff members would go inside and catch a meeting. I would say there's only a couple that wouldn't ever go inside. They would be like making phone calls outside, but most of them went in. And I never heard any of them share in those meetings while they were working. But I have gone to meetings with them that like I saw them at
Mm-hmm.
where they weren't working. It was just the meeting they were at. And I was at that meeting too on my own time while in sober living and just catching meetings with my friends that I met in the program. And I would see them at the meetings and hear them share and be like, oh, that's cool. Like,
Right.
like that's, and I always thought it was interesting and I always respected it because we have these conversations. I don't need to hear, I'll say Joe, because this guy Joe and I were really close, and he was my sober living manager, right? And he was about your age, like 40 years old, battled addiction to meth for 18, 19 years, in and out of jails, you know what I mean? And lost his kids, that kind of stuff. And he was 18 months clean from meth when I met him when I first got in recovery. And he was that guy that had all the energy, took you to the gym, and, him and I got along really well. He always had really good wisdom to, like, talk to me about. Like, there was one thing he always said to me that always stuck with me, and it was that we have a choice today. You know, we have the choice to not drink or not use. However, as soon as we drink or use, we lose that choice. And
Absolutely.
that was always so important to me to know that we have a choice to not do it. But as soon as I use it, that choice is gone and it's in charge now, not me.
Right.
Um, he all of a sudden stopped showing up to work. And it wasn't like Joe. Joe was early every day. He wasn't there for a couple days and we were worried. And then we found out he was back in the residential. He, relapsed for a night and then got back into treatment. I saw him at the meeting that he wouldn't take us to. He was always there at, I think he was a greeter. He had one of the responsibilities. He was a door guy greeter, I forget. But he was there, and I was 2 3 months sober at the time. And when it happened, I had talked to my sponsor and I talked to both of my therapists, and I have a mentor in the program. That's a woman that I'll never call a sponsor because I feel like we shouldn't have that relationship. So I just call her a mentor. I talked to all four of them. I needed to know all their opinions, and they all had the same exact opinion. And it was just because he lost his choice that night doesn't mean that anything he said to you was wrong. All his advice was still good advice that kept him sober that day. It's
Mm-hmm.
just that he didn't listen to his own advice the day that he relapsed. So you still can take his advice and take everything you learn from him and have it help you and benefit you in your sobriety. But just don't forget to remember this and all of the little things he taught you so that you don't relapse. Remember to talk to yourself. Remember to listen to yourself. Remember to check in with yourself. So use what he did as a lesson.
Mm.
And I'm like, oh, okay. So it was all basically about perspective and to look at it differently. So, I love Joe to death, and I think he's got a couple of years now, because he went through it again. But it happens how it happens. But the whole thing started again because I saw him in meetings randomly.
Mhm.
And luckily, him and I are still friends to this day. It's been 3.5 years, and we play Words with Friends. That's our friendship, is to play Words with Friends with each other. And that's the kind of little shit like that I appreciate sobriety, because that's somebody he's one of the first people that I became friends with and met sober, and our friendship is purely based off of likes and dislikes and what we have in common and what we don't have in common, and not, hey, I used to get high with you, we're friends. Hey,
Yeah.
I got you drugs, or you got me drugs, so we're friends. Like, think about it. Like, our friendships before, like, even, you and Nicole, it's one of those things. You're both sober now, but it's a lot different in a dynamic because you saw some shit and you lived a life together.
Mhm.
And that kind of separation after is important, because then you could easily fall back into old habits. Not to
Mhm.
say that you two were looking to get back in. You could do the opposite and get together and build a brand new fucking catch program for the court systems to find girls and help girls. It, it's the one dynamic or the other.
Yeah.
We're addicts. We don't do anything half-assed.
No.
You know,
Ever.
we we full ass everything.
Yeah.
So if we're going to be a drug addict, we're gonna be a fucking drug addict.
Yeah, we are.
And if we're going to try and help people, we're going to dedicate every minute we have to try to help people.
Yeah.
I'm fulfilling my addiction right now. I am at a meeting center 12 hours a day, doing podcasts and talking to people in person or virtually all across the world every single day, all day.
Mhm.
And someone said to me, like, oh, like, that's really great, and you're a great dude for doing all that and putting all this out. I'm like, I'm fucking selfish.
Right. I'm doing it for
There's
me.
there's motives behind everything. Yeah, like, I want to raise awareness. Yeah, but I need this for my sobriety too.
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
need I need to be talking to you. Like, no one came to the 9 a.m. AA meeting this morning that I host. So I didn't talk to any alcoholics at 9 a.m. Like, I enjoy talking. I enjoy starting my day with this kind of conversation.
Yeah.
I don't like the fact that the conversation is as dark as it can be sometimes. The subject matter of our past, I don't like that happened to you. I like the conversation of two alcoholics sitting down and relating to each other, so you don't have to feel so alone in your thoughts and your feelings.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, and I think I love that part about my job too. It keeps me constantly reminded of what I've crawled out of. So yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I try to be aware that a lot of the things, even though it's technically giving back that I do, are definitely for me, but it's because my recovery comes first in my life. So if I keep these actions in front of me all day, if I'm seeing women out there where I used to be all the time, if I am helping women in recovery work programming, I can remember myself when I felt that way. And it's easy to forget, like, because my life is so good now and I have so much joy and peace and serenity. It's easy for me to forget sometimes how it felt the other way. And I don't want to forget that.
And I think that's a huge difference from what your program is today as opposed to what it was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
When you were just white knuckling it, you weren't helping anybody either. You
Mm-mm.
weren't out on the streets helping other girls. You were literally just trying to live a life as if that never happened. And now you are keeping your past on the forefront by revisiting, that not the exact same places, but the same kind of settings, you
Oh
know,
no, some of these places are the
are
exact
the
same.
exact, oh, are, okay, even better. Yeah.
Yeah, I have ministered to women on the streets in the same corners that I stood on several years ago.
Any of them from several years ago?
Yeah, yeah. There's a couple women that are still out there. I don't know how it happened because I know the statistics aren't in our favor, but somehow more than average of the women that I ran with are in recovery now.
Hmm.
I've got at least 6 women that I know of in recovery, and I only know 2 out there right now that are still using. So I
That's
don't
pretty
know.
good. Those are pretty good numbers. And
Yeah.
and you know what it is though too. It's also the law of attraction. It's the power of what one person can do in numbers and in groups. So one person out of that 6 got clean and then helped another girl and then helped
Yeah.
another girl and then all of a sudden there's 4 of you and that other 5th girl and the 6th girl. They're like, holy shit, this is gonna be not easy, but look at them, they're all doing it. And then
Right.
they get confidence going into the sobriety of I can do this, I can escape this because they did. They were me, and look at them now. I can do this too. And I think that happens a lot with the groups. If you're in a group and you kind of travel in a pack in a group, that where if one can kind of break through and break the mold and kind of show the rest how to do it, not all at once, then somebody else will trickle off. Somebody else will trickle off, and then be like,
Yeah.
and next thing you know, there's 6 of you, and like you said, there's 2 more out there, but still, that's hopefully sometime, soon they'll have their epiphany, their moment of clarity. That's what we'll call it. Their moment of
Yeah.
clarity, where they go,
All I can do is
oh,
plant seeds. I just call it planting seeds because I've seen a couple of the women that I knew when I was using out there, and unfortunate. Well, I don't know if it's unfortunate or fortunately, very, very rarely do I actually get recognized because of how different I look.
yeah,
On top of the fact that they're under the influence of different drugs, even women. There was one woman that I saw that I know I spent good 2 years running side by side with, laying in trap houses with, getting high with, that saw me and never even recognized who I was. And I kept it that way because um I'm just going to plant seeds that if I can do it, anybody, if I can get sober, anybody in this universe can, because I was the bottom of the bottom barrel. Like, there's some people have bottoms that are like here. Mine was way about 200 feet below that. My bottom was real low. Okay. So if I can recover, anybody can.
yeah, and two, okay, so I have a theory that all of our bottoms are the same, and I think that a lot of us have different thresholds for pain.
Mm-hmm.
We have different thresholds of what we can withstand inside of our addiction to continue going, to be able to hit another bottom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because ultimately our bottom, in my opinion, is when we surrender to a program. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you did not hit your bottom, in my opinion, at all when you got sober the first time,
Right.
because you didn't do a program. You weren't broken enough yet. You never tried to claw your way back up yet. You were still halfway down the well when you relapsed again to continue going through that. So that's why it didn't hurt as much. You were still in the well,
Yeah. Yeah.
because the bottom, literally by definition, it's there.
Yeah.
So all you can do from there is start to climb up and out and start making our ascension out of being the bottom of this fucking pit that
Right.
addiction is. So, I think that we all have the same bottom, but we all have different speed bumps and different things that we can endure to be like, nah, fuck it, I'm gonna keep going. Because there's some
Right.
girls, there's some girls that be like, I'm never gonna do trafficking, I can't do it. I don't like sex, I don't like dicks, I don't like whatever, and I can't do it, so I got to get sober because I'm not gonna fuck. And then
Mm-hmm.
boom, they get sober. And then there's other girls who are like, no, I can do it, you know.
Yeah.
And there's even guys that are like, no, I can throw on a dress and I can do it. I can cross dress and do it. I can be a guy and do it. No, I can do it. So, like, you know, it's not even a matter of male or female, because there's plenty of males that are also doing sex work. Um, just some differently than others.
Yeah.
But either way, I'm just glad that you are doing it differently this time. You're not trying to white knuckle it again. You go to meetings, you participate in your recovery. And even it's important that you're giving back during the holidays. You're doing a Thanksgiving for the girls. Like, you're remembering where you came from this time. You're not pretending. Like I said before, it was, I'm Molly, and I was never an addict, and here I am sober. I'm straight. I'm just straight edge. And then this time you're like, no, I was you 4 years ago. You can have a day like this. You can help people. That's so huge and so, so vital to the community and what you're doing. So thank you.
Thank
So
you.
I'm not in your community to thank you for the community. And I can already just assume you don't get thanked a lot for what you do. We do thankless work. We do work where you get thanked by the person that you're not even helping. We get thanks from people who are like saying thank you for what you do for the community. I'm not a drug addict, I'm not alcoholic, but you're really vital for what this community needs. But
Hmm.
you'll never see them at a meeting,
Right.
because they're sober. They just appreciate you doing the work so they don't have to.
Hmm.
you
Yeah, yeah,
know
definitely.
so it's so funny. I get thanks here and there from addicts and sponsees that are grateful, but the thanks that I normally hear is from people that don't ever need my services, don't ever want my services. They just
Yeah.
appreciate it being here. It's just weird how it works, but I appreciate what you're doing out there so much. Like, it's a fucking amazing that you're just showing up back into. It's so hard to show up to your old stomping grounds, and it's not even like stomping grounds where you just got high at. It's stomping grounds where, like, it's a lot of PTSD, I'm sure.
Oh,
But
yeah.
when you face it, it has to make it easier, right? Facing it.
Mhm. Yeah, it's made it a lot easier. The first time that I went out to where I'd been before, it was terrifying, but I mean, and I'd be downplaying it if I didn't mention that, my higher power, which I choose to call God, really showed me that that's what he called me to do. It's not for everybody, but I found peace in that moment where other people might not find it. So it's not necessarily for everybody, but something about the way I'm wired, that is what I needed to heal, was to go into that same place and see it for what it was, just a corner on the street. It wasn't this nightmare that I had built it in my mind. And to see the woman struggling in the same corner, I don't feel as alone. Even though I'm out of it now, I'm not so terrible of a person that it only happened to me. It can happen to anybody.
And it does happen to anybody. We see that. So thank you so much for sitting down and opening up and talking about that. I know it's not easy talking about a lot of that stuff. Um, it's not supposed to be easy, you know. But the important thing is that you are accepting of it. If you didn't accept that it happened, you wouldn't talk about it so candidly.
Right.
And that acceptance is why you're sober.
Hmm.
It's one of the many reasons you're sober. But gaining acceptance of our past, holy shit. When you can gain acceptance over anything, no wonder why it's the last phase in depression. You know what I mean? When, like,
Right.
denial and all that shit, like, when you have acceptance and you can gain acceptance and, like, a grieving process or anything,
Hmm.
oh god, weight off your shoulders is just, like, not even describable.
Right.
I love words and talking, and I can't even describe the feeling of what acceptance is when it really lifts off my shoulders. So thank you again,
You're
and
welcome.
you're awesome, and I'm so glad that you're doing what you're doing. Like, that's so fucking cool.
Thank you.